Good evening. I'm Dr. Denavo Robinson, and we want to welcome you to the ECPPS Board of Education meeting. As you can see, the board members are here face-to-face, but socially distanced, and we're having a virtual for all others than superintendent and her chief of staffs, our chiefs. We are coming into open session. We're resuming an open session from our closed session. And we will begin that with our Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. So I would ask you now if you please stand with me for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. We now have a moment of silence. Thank you. I will ask Ms. Tammy Sawyer to give us our roll call.
Dr. Denavo Robinson.
Here.
Ms. Sharon Morton. Mr. George Archuleta.
Here.
Ms. Virginia Houston. Mr. Walter B. Jolly. Ms. Pam Herrera. Dr. Sheila Williams.
Fantastic, thank you. Ms. Warden, would you give us our ethics statement, please?
Welcome to the 7 p.m. regular meeting of the Elizabeth City Board of Education. It is my duty to remind members of the board that it is your responsibility to avoid all conflicts of interest, potential conflicts of interest, in accordance with Chapter 138A of North Carolina General Statutes. As public servants, it is your duty to continually monitor, evaluate, and manage your personal, financial, and professional affairs in such a way as to ensure the absence of conflict or potential conflicts. Does any member know of any conflict of interest or potential conflict of interest with respect to any matter coming before the board this evening? Let the record reflect that no conflict.
Thank you very much, Ms. Warden. Would ask for a motion to approve the agenda with the following changes. The superintendent's report will be given under personalized education, and that we will not be voting on closed session minutes. Need a motion with those exceptions? Been properly moved and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye, or please raise your hand.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. Thank you very much. Need a motion to approve the June 29th regularly scheduled meeting minutes and the July 20th committee meeting minutes.
I make a motion that we approve the June 29th and July 20th meeting.
It's been properly moved by Mr. Archuleta, second by Dr. Williams. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye by raising your hand. Those opposed, same sign. Thank you, the motion carries. Because we are in a public forum and in a virtual meeting, it's important that we hear from those people who want to speak in public forum. We respect your wishes. We respect that you have your truth, and we respect that we think that you should have the opportunity to speak. We've asked that your remarks is sent to Ms. Tammy Sawyer, and Ms. Tammy Sawyer will read your remarks in their entirety. Ms. Sawyer.
Thank you, Chair Robinson. This evening, we have a public comment that was actually sent to be part of the meeting last month, but it was not received by email, so we did receive it after the meeting began, so we'd like to read that this evening. That email is from Phil Hornthal. Dear school board members, my wife, Christy, and I are the proud parents of 3 children who are enrolled in or have graduated from the Elizabeth City Pasquotank County Public Schools. I am also a 1985 graduate of Northeastern High School, and Christy graduated from Northern Nash High in Rocky Mount. We both value our public schools and think it is important for our children to attend ECPPS and to gain an education with life experiences that will equip them to be well-rounded citizens in our diverse modern world. Although I was never smart enough to vie for valedictorian and salutatorian while at NHS, those were honors that I deemed worthy. And I was proud of Angela Gray and Tori Moorhard when they were awarded those honorariums for the class of '85. Although I followed the reasoning behind the board's decision to abolish this practice last year, I never agreed with it and quite frankly believe it diminishes our high school's reputation locally and throughout our area and state. Specifically, when I open the Daily Advance and read about the accomplishments of intelligent, hardworking, and driven students from other high schools in our area, it pains me to consider the children from ECPPS's 2 high schools whose hard work and dedication goes unrecognized. Furthermore, although one could argue that this only technically affects 2 students per year at each of our high schools, I believe this decision actually affects all of the students at NHS and Pasquotank County High School and our larger community as a whole. While there will always be hurt feelings and petty jealousies, I truly believe that the vast majority of students feel like I did back in the day, and I know that our school system misses an opportunity to shine. I am also readily aware that the thinking behind the decision may have involved removing unnecessary competition and its resulting backlash. However, competition is a part of every class our children take from kindergarten on. Further, healthy competition is a part of our society, and learning about it in high school prepares our children for college, the military, and life, regardless of their class rank or plans after high school. As such, we plead that the school board carefully reconsider this decision, and in so doing, ask itself why our other local school systems have not taken this drastic step with their own senior classes. Thank you for all you do in your service to the community. It is not an easy job. Sincerely, Phil Hornthal. Our next public comment is from Christy and Phil Hornthal for this meeting tonight. Dr. Edmonds and school board members, good evening. We are Christy and Phil Hornthal. We live at 1930 River Shore Road, Elizabeth City, and our two children, James, 9th grade, and Ellie, 12th grade, attend Northeastern High School. Christy also teaches kindergarten at J.C. Sawyer School. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with y'all through email. First, we would like to commend Dr. Edmonds for the cutting-edge job she did in leading our schools to virtual learning when COVID-19 hit our world unexpectedly last spring. By all accounts, she was ahead of the curve, and from talking with friends with children in neighboring school districts, she was ahead of other school systems in planning and execution. School board, you are to be commended on this hire. Second, we would like to thank Dr. Edmonds, George Archuleta, Sharon Warden, and Pam Herrera for their diligence, compassion, and caring in always responding to our texts, calls, or emails. Whether or not we agree, it's nice to know you are heard. The purpose of this email is to express our support for allowing our students back into the school buildings in August. This morning, our local health department announced that on July 24th, Northeastern North Carolina had 0 new COVID-19 cases and a decreasing curve. This was especially good news considering the number of people who have returned to mega stores to shop, to their places of worship, and to support our restaurants. It is also consistent with recent national healthcare guidance from the CDC, which this past Thursday released new guidelines with a heavy focus on reopening schools. The CDC unequivocally states, and we quote, "It is critically important for our public health to open schools this fall. School closures have disrupted normal ways of life for children and parents, and they have had negative health consequences on our youth. CDC is prepared to work with K-12 schools to safely reopen while protecting the most vulnerable." Despite the overwhelming evidence that school closures will absolutely harm the health and welfare of our students, particularly our least privileged kids, we understand that a difficult roadblock you all may face in reopening schools is the fear and, in some instances, outright refusal of some teachers to return to teaching. Let us be clear. We believe that teachers are among the most essential employees in America. If grocery store employees, waiters, cooks, construction workers, and countless other occupations in America are deemed essential services, why are our teachers not deemed essential employees? Our teachers have one of the most important jobs in America. Their job is to provide the children of our country with a free and appropriate education under our North Carolina Constitution. Many of our most vulnerable students in poverty need a traditional school setting to receive an appropriate education. They depend on school for a break from the nightmare of home life. They depend on a hot meal in a clean setting. They depend on the teacher who loves them unconditionally. They depend on the coaches who encourage them. They depend on the bus driver who greets them with a smile and kind words every morning. They depend on a building to offer a safe and comfortable learning environment. If our school buildings remain closed, our underprivileged children will fall even further behind. These children are not receiving their right to a basic education, no matter how hard the teachers try to teach them virtually. Even more alarming is that these children have lost their safe place. Many of these children are already behind their more privileged peers academically, and they will never recover from being out of the school building for at least a half of a year of their education. The achievement gap will be a cavern. Many of our middle and high school students will turn to gangs and drugs because they have no support system to escape that way. If we do not open our school building in August, we will negatively change the trajectory of hundreds of our students' lives in Pasco County. The fear of the unknown is understandable. However, as the CDC noted in their report last week, children and adolescents account for less than 0.1% of the COVID-19 related deaths nationwide. And we dare say that number is zero in our county. Given this infinitesimal chance of COVID in children, why not let each parent make their own choice for their own children? If they wish to have their children learn virtually, there are teachers who would prefer to teach that way. This would also decrease the number of students and teachers in the actual classroom, which would ease the ability of the school system to meet 50% capacity and other social distancing goals of Plan B. It would also allow parents without adequate internet, childcare, or appropriate learning environments to give their kids a fighting chance. In conclusion, we understand other school systems have taken the easy way out by returning only to virtual schools. Despite this, we pray the school board will give Dr. Edmonds the latitude and discretion to show us all once again that she is ahead of the curve when it comes to the best interest of our children and our school system. Sincerely, Christy and Phil Bartholomew. Our next comment comes this evening from Kimberly Cooper. I would like to comment on the upcoming meeting. I have two boys that will be attending Northeastern High School. Both of them have underlying issues. One has asthma and the other has inflammation of the liver and spleen. Expecting them to be in class where they are vulnerable to this virus is extremely irresponsible. If they are expected to return, I will be forced to homeschool. Please consider this when making your decision. Thank you for allowing me to express my concerns. Our next comment comes from Sean Terrence Boyce. To whom this may concern, I am a parent in Elizabeth City, and although I no longer have children in school, I am concerned about the well-being of all citizens in this city. With that being said, I don't think allowing the children to go back in the buildings is a good idea. The main reason being there are too many touch points. We as adults touch so many things each day unknowingly, and children are even worse. They touch everything knowingly, especially their faces. So unless you all have an ironclad way of keeping an outbreak from happening, I don't think the school building should open back up until we have a handle on the virus. Best regards. Our next comments come from Ginger Herrera. COVID-19 has brought about challenges in every aspect of our lives. One of the larger obstacles we face today is the education of our children. If we are honest, I think we all will admit that distance learning in the spring of 2020 was less than what we want for our students. In fact, a working paper from the nonprofit NWEA, with authors from Brown University and UVA, shows students will begin this year with 1/3 less of the expected progress from the previous school year. No one is to blame for this. Everyone did the best they could given the unprecedented times we faced. As we enter the 2020-2021 school year, I would encourage the ECPPS school system to implement a blend of in-person and remote learning for the families that feel this would be the best option for their child. In my opinion, this is the best chance we have to close the gap on what was missed last year and propel forward. Without a blend, I fear our dropout rate at the high school level will increase and our younger children will miss out on foundational concepts. Remote learning brings with it many challenges. First and foremost is training and facilitating this style of learning. Given that we are 3 weeks from our school start date, this is a great concern to me as a parent. Challenges for students include lack of a controlled learning environment, no social interaction with peers, For some students, little to no assistance or guidance at home, and lack of access, knowledge of technology needed for success. It requires learners to be self-motivated. Also lost is the bond that is formed between teachers and students when there is face-to-face interaction. For some of our students, school is their safe place, and it is desperately needed. Much is being asked of our teachers at this time, and I hope training time for this new learning style is set aside for them daily, and it is not glossed over or expected after hours. On another matter, I would like to formally request that you review your previous decision to require the NHS athletic director to teach 3 classes in addition to his athletic director duties. I have been made aware he is retiring due to this issue. Mr. Moore is a nationally certified teacher who has been teaching for 33 years and is known as one of the best teachers at NHS by his previous students. Science teachers are in short supply, and especially one with his amount of experience. In my opinion, this is worth revisiting to keep such an experienced teacher. For the past 8 years, Mr. Moore has served tirelessly as our athletic director, and during a pandemic is not the time to increase his teaching load with all the other added responsibilities for athletics. In our region, other athletic directors teach as follows: 1 class for First Light, Currituck, Manteo, and Hertford County. 2 classes, Edenton, Gates, and Perquimans. Also note, of those athletic directors that teach 2 classes, 1 or both are PE classes, which would take less prep time. To some, sports is seen as unnecessary, but we need to take into account the positive impact sports has on our students. For some students, these coaches and mentors are the very people who keep them in school and guide their life path to keep them on a positive trajectory. This influence is critical during the high school years. Life skills are learned in sports that can't be taught in a classroom or online, none of which would be possible without an athletic director. I've recently heard we need to be able to look at a situation and pivot. I ask that you pivot in this situation and reconsider in this decision. The fate of high school sports this year is unknown until further guidance is received from the NCHSAA. If we are able to participate, we will need sound guidance. In my opinion, we will desperately need the guidance of our 8-year veteran athletic director. In closing, as the child of a former school board member, I understand the tough position you are in. You will never make everyone happy, and I know there are things you can't discuss publicly. I respect that. Thank you for your service to our children and community. Regards. The next comment comes from the Elizabeth City Pasquotank chapter of NCAE, specifically officers Julie Mansfield, Nandita Banerjee, and Jennifer Pedrasky. Good evening, Chairman Robinson, Vice Chair Warden, board members, and Dr. Edmonds. The officers of the local chapter of NCAE have sent out a survey to their members regarding the possible reentry plans. While the number of responses was low, we received 16 out of 49, the responses themselves provided valid information and concerns. Here are some of the takeaways from the responses. 75% of the members who responded felt Plan C was a better option, while 25% said Plan B. Staff members have many questions about each of the plans. They understand that each of the plans have their own drawbacks and neither plan is perfect. Our members are willing to do what is best for our students. Some of the concerns and questions from our members are as follows. There is concern about the financial cost of Plan B. How will the district fund the extra personnel and supplies needed to correctly implement Plan B? The logistics of Plan B seem impossible for most of our members, from daily screening of staff and students to transportation to disinfecting classrooms and common areas. The question is, how will it all get done and still have time to teach? Many of the members expressed that there is not enough time to prepare for Plan B by August 17th. The social and emotional well-being of the students is a major concern for staff. There was acknowledgement that both plans could have a dramatic effect on the emotional well-being of our students. Will Plan B, with the social distancing requirements and lack of physical closeness, be too difficult for our youngest students, many of whom would greet their friends and teachers with daily hugs? In Plan C, will the isolation that many students will face be too much for them to handle? How will our students handle the disappointment of no sports and many other activities that will have to be canceled? We understand that working parents rely on schools to care for their children so that they can go to work. Our members are worried about remote learning being less effective than face-to-face learning, and students may be less engaged in remote lessons. The fact that some students and staff do not have reliable internet is also a factor that makes remote learning more difficult. If Plan C is chosen, some members expressed that they would like to be given the opportunity to work from their classrooms, where they have access to all their teaching materials and reliable internet. Our most vulnerable students, especially those in the exceptional children and ESL departments, have more of a need for face-to-face instruction. If Plan C is chosen, can there be exceptions made for these students if parents request it? The most frequently mentioned concern was for the safety and health of the student, staff, and their families at home. Some of our students may not be high risk themselves, but may have someone in their family who is. A number of students are being raised by their grandparents, who may be more at risk of serious complications from the virus. More experienced staff members may be in the age category that the CD says is a higher risk. Some of our members are single parents who do not have the support that would be needed if they became seriously ill for an extended time. We, the officers of Elizabeth City Pasquotank NCAE, understand the difficult decisions you are about to make. We urge you to keep the health, safety, and well-being of our students and staff at the forefront while making your decisions. We would like to commend Dr. Edmonds and the board on your leadership thus far during these unprecedented times. We moved into emergency remote learning in a matter of days and continue to provide our students with educational opportunities and nutritious meals. We believe that we, as a district, did an amazing job, and that is due to your leadership and the commitment of teachers and staff of Elizabeth City Pasquotank Public Schools. We also realize that our efforts were not perfect, and we know that we will learn from mistakes made and from feedback from our families. Thank you for your time and for listening to the concerns of our members. Whatever plan you decide on this evening, please know that the members of Elizabeth City Pasquotank NCAE will work with you to do what is best for our students. Sincerely. The next comment we have this evening is from Angela Cobb, principal of Northeastern High School. I met Northeastern High School Athletic Director Duncan Moore over the flip of a coin, literally. I had been named the new principal at NHS for less than a week when he approached me to participate in the coin toss at the first home football game. I sat on one of the cheerleader boxes on the sidelines, a nervous wreck, and he and the head referee convinced me that if I dropped the coin, I would have to flip it all over again. In that moment, a working partnership was formed. Duncan Moore is an unassuming, behind-the-scenes supporter of Northeastern High School, where he has spent 25+ years as an educator, and the last 8 with the additional commitment as the athletic director. Duncan worked tirelessly. He came in at 7:30 in the morning, an advanced class of chemistry or physics, spent the second block planning for his academic responsibilities, and then immersed himself into the world of athletics after lunch. He constantly completed paperwork required to keep the NHS athletic program not just afloat, but recognized in the region and across the state as one of high quality. He carefully assessed the care and quality of athletic fields and equipment to make sure their conditions represented the kind of program he stood for. Many nights after everyone else was long gone, one could spot his truck driving around our campus to make sure all was right in the land of our athletic eagles. His work as a member of the NHS team has not gone unnoticed by our school, its alumni, the community, and the NCHSAA. He was recognized as the NCHSAA Charlie Adams Distinguished Service Award winner for Region 1 of North Carolina. He has also been recognized as a phenomenal teacher by students past and present, oftentimes sitting with those he has impacted at senior scholar dinners or athletic commitment signings. In interactions with him, he sometimes reminds me of my pragmatic grandfather. He doesn't have a whole lot to say, but when he does say something, it is well worth hearing. He took me under his wing, teaching me the ins and outs of athletics at the high school level. I was an eager student because of coming from the elementary world. I knew absolutely nothing. He would turn his head quizzically at me and give me a side eye at some of my crazy ideas, but he trusted my instincts. Our adventures from Northeastern High School since August of 2018 have taken us from selling signs to alumni classes, to recognitions at county commissioner meetings, to painting bleachers, to add a student selection for basketball, to confetti poppers at football games, to a send-off parade that morphed into a larger send-off parade the next year. We have stood together on the fields at NC State and Wake Forest for 2 consecutive years in a row at a state championship football game, a feat that some athletic directors and principals never have happened to them in a lifetime. To say that he will leave a void at Northeastern High School is an understatement. What I can say is that the working relationship we have has grown into a friendship that I truly treasure. Best of luck to you, Duncan Moore. You can definitely leave the Eagles' nest on July 31st, knowing that you have always and always will own your Eagle pride. And our last comment for the evening is from Kristen Waterbury. This upcoming 2020-21 school year has many considerations for the beneficial and essential learning needs of all of the students that attend the ECPPS school district. With that being said, I would like to suggest and urge the looping of students and keeping those children together while they move up into the next grade level. While I understand that it may not be feasible for teachers to loop with their current class and students, children and students can loop together. This would ensure for many the best and most effective learning environment during this upcoming school year. Looping students would provide the consistency within the classroom and our virtual learning environment from the previous year to this upcoming 2020-21 school year. If children are kept together and looped together to the next grade level, then one teacher can then gain knowledge of all of their new to them students by speaking with and collaborating with one last year's teacher versus many teachers to know where each student is academically. Consistency is key, not only for the vitality of younger learners in the classroom or virtual setting, but also for a young child's development in general. Last year ended abruptly, therefore shattered the ongoing consistency and pattern of learning. We need a sense of belonging. It is imperative that kids have a sense of belonging in the classroom, in person or virtual setting. With this learning platform, children will already have friends and be familiar with each other, even if they are not familiar with their teacher, classroom, or virtual setting, making this an optimal learning setting and optimizing the students' and the teacher's success in the already trying, confusing, and unsettled COVID area of living and learning. Sincerely. That concludes the public comment.
Thank you, Ms. Sawyer. On behalf of the board, we would like to thank each citizen for submitting comments to our board this evening. Please know that we will add your comments into our decision-making process. We will now start our committee meeting reports, and we'll start with our finance, business, and technology systems. And the chair of that committee is our vice chair of the board, Sharon Warden. Ms. Warden.
Everyone has had an opportunity. Questions about there are no questions, it will go to our financial. Chair Robinson, Vice Chair Warden, Superintendent Edmonds, and Board Member City. Vice Chair Warden, Finance is seeking approval for one item. It's attachment FBT 02. This is a textbook quote for class sets of physical textbooks to accompany our current online subscriptions. Are there any questions? There being no questions, that concludes my request. We have had a request for I am going to ask that we take that. So may I have all in favor? Any opposed? We'll move forward with that. Quote. That concludes my.
Thank you, Ms. Ward, we appreciate that. Our next committee is our personalized education, chaired by Mr. Walter Jolly. Mr. Jolly?
Reentry 2021. That will be 4, 5, 6.
Good evening. Chair Robinson, Vice Chair Warden, Committee Chair Mr. Jolly, and board members. Before I begin my presentation for this evening, I would like to say a huge thank you to the staff of Elizabeth City Pasquotank Public Schools for their dedication and commitment to our students. I would like to thank our students for being so resilient in such a tough time, and thank you to our families for their support. As one of the public comments says, we may not always agree, but we always do at the end what is best for the students. This evening, the team and I will share a recommendation for the reopening of schools for the 2020-21 school year. We do understand that this is a difficult decision that we did not take lightly, and we know that our Board of Education will not take lightly. As you've heard from the community comments, there are different thoughts about what this should look like. And so we know when we brought this presentation to you this evening that based on our surveys, there's a population of our community that will not be happy. And what we had to keep at the forefront of our thinking, what is best for the students? How do we ensure safety for our students? And as I'm going through my presentation, I will share with you the 4 filters that we used as we were thinking through how we would share this with you this evening as we were developing our plan. I, along with the staff, will present. Our chief officers will present here with us, and the others, they will present with us virtually. Next slide, please. COVID-19 has challenged our daily way of life as well as our process of schooling our students. COVID-19 has challenged everything that we know about schooling. We've had to rethink the operations of the district. We've had to rethink what does it mean by instruction, schedules, health and safety, interaction with one another. We heard in the public comments, our younger students are so used to meeting and greeting their teachers with a hug. We have to rethink that. We must reimagine the instructional delivery models. We've learned from the past in the spring that it's not always a face-to-face. It's not always a virtual. Sometimes we have to look at that blended model. And we have to reform our thinking of where and when learning takes place. Embrace that learning can take place anywhere and anytime. And renew our commitment to ensuring every child receives a quality education in a safe environment. Our district, as well as other districts across the state, were required to develop a plan. And we had to look at 3 different options. And I know that's difficult for our board members to see, so I'm going to briefly go through those and share with you what they are. The first one is Plan A, which is that traditional way of teaching, face-to-face, every day, all students in the classroom. Plan B is looking at the density, keeping social distancing, ensuring that we're following the safety protocols. And Plan B had several options. I know we often speak of Plan B as just one particular option, but there's actually an A through F that goes with Plan B. One that's very 100% face-to-face, if you can hold the students, down to F, where you can have a hybrid model to do what fits best in the school district. And then we have Plan C. Plan C was a complete remote option. The school facilities are closed and all of our students are learning from home. We know Governor Cooper has taken Plan A off the table. So our options are Plan B and Plan C. Next slide, please. As we work to better understand COVID-19, and we're looking at our school community, we're looking at our children. When I first brought to you the question of how are the children, we were in a very traditional setting. We all kind of knew what it took. We knew what it would look like. So now when we ask ourselves, how are the children? There are 4 filters that we used as we were developing our plan. And these are the filters that we use whether we're in virtual or face-to-face. Accountability, ensuring that we're all doing what's best for our students. Parents, our students, our staff. Equity, you will hear throughout the presentations this evening, that piece on equity. Accessibility and safety. And we cannot forget, how is the staff of Elizabeth City Pasquotank Public Schools? We often ask ourselves, how are the children? And we've had some conversation and we've heard some comments around ensuring that our staff is safe, that they are working in a safe environment. So we definitely don't want to put aside the staff piece. Next slide, please. So we provided to our parents a survey, and in that survey, they were given an option. And those options were, for your child, would you prefer a plan where your student is in remote instruction option? That is very much the Plan C. All of the learning will take place at home. The The students will not come onto our campus. And we would have those parents complete the remote option form, and their principals will be following up with them. That is an option that is always on the table for any parent who wants their child to stay at home and continue learning through the virtual option. The other option is Plan B. And in Plan B, there are several options. And if you go to the Lighting Our Way Forward document on page 13, it starts with all of those options. It allows that students can be on our campus, and it's a blended learning approach. But I want to be sure that our parents understand that both of these options, that option where they want complete remote instruction, is an option for them. Next slide, please. Wow, and you really can't see this one. I'm proposing that we have those students and those families that are going to be in the remote instruction option, the Plan C, because that's how everyone knows it as Plan C. Those students are not included in this. The parents have that option. This option is for the parents and families that chose Plan B and wanted some face-to-face. Option F is a hybrid. It allows the district to determine what is best for the district. Which courses do we want to offer face-to-face, and which of those courses will remain virtual? Which students will be on the campus and which students will be home? In the Plan B model, it allows for flexibility. And I don't want to leave this slide without saying that our priority for the district will be our most vulnerable populations of students, which are our students with disabilities and our pre-K students. Next slide, please. So what am I proposing to you this evening? I'm proposing that we have a hybrid for Plan B that will allow our students that are the most vulnerable students in the district to be able to come in and have assessments done, IEP meetings. Our pre-K students will be allowed to come in, and it would be all scheduled and planned out with the director of those programs, but be able to do those assessments. The majority of our students in this plan would be remote for the first 9 weeks, with the exception of the 2 cases I just shared with you. To be able to have our students with IEPs, when we have those meetings set up, that they can come into the building on a one-to-one, face-to-face with the teachers to get the therapies that they may need. Do you have their assessments done? This would not be classes of children. It would be on an individual basis. And the same thing for our pre-K students, to be able to have them come in and have their assessments done. And you'll hear more about that as the team presents. And then have an opportunity for the board to reassess where we are in 4 weeks. Yes. Four weeks after we start school. Next slide, please. And of course, the board can determine when you would like to reassess. And certainly I'm saying to reassess to see where we are in terms of, are we looking at additional services that need to be provided at that time. And we do know that there can be an impact on the decisions that are made, the decision that's made this evening. If the COVID-19 trends continue to increase, we know that the governor will probably come back before us. And so we will definitely stay in compliance with whatever the governor's orders are. And we receive guidance from the Department of Health and Human Services quite often, and we will ensure that we stay within those guidelines. I did not talk about the staffing piece, and I want to go back and loop that in. We did a staff survey, excuse me, and we asked our staff, if you had an option, would you choose to teach remotely or hybrid or face-to-face? Based on that data, and we will go back and ask our teachers, they will have an option as well. If they prefer to teach in the remote environment, then will be able to do that. And those who want to come into the building for some face-to-face, we will do that work to see how we can get those in the building. And if we have teachers who've chosen to teach virtually, but would like to come into their classroom and teach remotely from their classroom, we do want to allow them to be able to do that. Of course, we would have plans in place that we will review, and we will certainly get guidance from our local health department so that they can let us know if there are changes that we need to make. But I want to be very clear about what we're asking and what I'm recommending. And before I turn it over to the chief officers to share with you how each of their areas fit into this plan, are there any questions for me? Okay, well, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. James Davis, and I will come back before you at the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Evans. Chair Robinson, Vice Chair Warden, Mr. Jolly, Chair of the Personalized Education Committee, Dr. Evans, and board members. There are two sides to the human resources departments that I oversee, operations and human resources. Each department will follow protocols to ensure the health and well-being of our students and our staff. The state has provided guidance for reentry in the Lighten Our Way Forward document, as well as in the Public Health Toolkit. As it was mentioned in one of the resources, we know that this will be a learning process for us all, students, staff, parents, school and district administrators. We will stay flexible as we monitor the spread of COVID in our state and region. We will continue to review new evidence and guidance and seek feedback from families, students, teachers, and staff, as well as the local health department and state officials. Next slide. As Dr. Edmonds stated, we're looking at 4 key components in our reentry. Shortly, you will hear from the following staff from Human Resources Department, including Operations and Auxiliary Services, Ms. Tammy Reinhardt, who is the Director of our School Nutrition Program, Ms. Sheila Hughes, our Career and Technical Education, or CTE Director, Ms. Marlene Wilkins, who is currently serving as our Maintenance Lead, Ms. Antoinette Reed, who is the Director of Student Services, Ms. Amber Godfrey, who is our Technology Director, and Ms. Amanda King, who is our Transportation Director. All of our departments will slowly phase in students and staff in a safe manner and will involve following guidance from the guidance from Governor, Center of Disease Control, and the Department of Health and Human Services. Now, Ms. Reinhardt.
Vice Chair Warden, Superintendent Edmonds, and board members. I want to talk to you tonight a little bit about our feeding sites. Our goal, always number one, is to ensure that our children are all fed. We have been feeding since March 17th at P.W. Moore, J.C. Sawyer, Pascatank Elementary, River Road, Sheep Kearney, at an average of 16,000 meals per week. This last Friday, we prepared and served 15,070 meals. As we transition into our feeding plan, our plan is to just continue our current feeding operation in those locations. As we phase in, our phase-in approach will be that all meals will be delivered to classrooms for no contact. Meals available for pickup will be at all school sites. For those that remain the remote option for the year, that will be available at all school sites. A little bit of data. Before COVID-19, 1 in 5 children in North Carolina experienced food insecurity. But now our statistics are saying that poverty has increased across our state by 130%. So we are just more important than ever to feed these children. I do want to thank our food bank. Our partnership with the food bank has just been invaluable. They have been providing additional food for the families of the children. And that partnership has just been wonderful. But as I close out and transition over to Ms. Sheila Hughes and CTE, I just want you to know that we will do everything we can to feed our children, to feed all of our children nutritious meals. It's the most important thing.
Chair Robinson, Vice Chair Warden, Superintendent Edmonds, and board members, good evening. The Career and Technical Education or CTE programs will follow the same guidance as curriculum and instruction. This guidance will be presented later in the presentation by Dr. Spencer, our Chief Academics Officer. CTE has purchased additional program-specific digital resources to support the remote learning environment. Additional supplies will be purchased to decrease cross-contact between students within the face-to-face environment. All agriculture teachers will have an approved plan for the ECPPS Harris demonstration farm to ensure the safety of students and staff while supporting the farm and grant projects. All other program-specific labs will have an approved plan as well. Each plan will have safety measures focused on social distancing, masks, hand hygiene, gloves for specific lab areas, and sanitation procedures for equipment. Large equipment that must be shared will have protective barriers or sanitized between students. In addition, parents will be given an option to sign a career and technical education farm or lab permission slip, and students will have an entrance-exit schedule for lab time. For some program areas, students will be able to obtain work-based learning opportunities, credentials, and certifications through remote simulation or scheduled time in the CTE labs. We are waiting on guidance from North Carolina Department of Public Instruction for other program areas that do not offer the same opportunity due to third-party test sites or evaluators. Thank you.
Chair Robinson, Vice Chair Warden, Superintendent Edmonds, and board. Maintenance has been working and is working hard to prepare the buildings in accordance with the guidelines that we have been given for reentry. Custodial staff has been cleaning and sanitizing. Maintenance staff has been working through work orders, and grounds has kept up with the mowing schedule for our schools and support buildings. As we prepare for reentry, maintenance is here to support the school principals and departments as they prepare their buildings to meet the guidelines. Maintenance constantly monitors all buildings and systems to ensure that the building systems are working, and we will continue to do so regardless of which plan we are operating under. Maintenance is also able to get in the building as they have been to make necessary repairs. Work on capital projects has continued throughout the summer.
There have been some delays. According to our contractors, that we had some issues obtaining parts and for labor because of COVID-19. However, other than the HVAC projects, capital projects are scheduled to be completed within the next 30 days. Training for custodial staff has been completed, as there will be additional training. We are currently understaffed due to some FLMA. To close out, we are here to ensure that our buildings and grounds are safe for the return of students and staff.
Good evening, Board Chair, Dr. Robinson, Vice Chair, Mrs. Warden, Superintendent, Dr. Edmonds, and board members. For student services, our goal is to foster and nurture balance for our teachers, our students, and our families. In order to address the impact of community and secondary trauma, we are charged with building a system of support to reduce trauma during COVID-19. School-wide positive behavior interventions and support, more commonly referred to as PBIS, will be used to enhance social and emotional wellness for students. Students will also be engaged each week in universal social emotional learning instruction. Our students will have access to a multi-tier system of support framework, also known as MTSS. MTSS is a framework that focuses on the whole child, that enables schools to provide tier support in academics and behavior with the focus primarily on prevention. Transparency and communication afford all stakeholders the opportunity to develop a common language of hope. In addition, transparency and communication also yields to frequent, ongoing communication about reopening plans. This pandemic has created more barriers that have become thorns in our side as we work diligently to cultivate a healthy, safe, and positive environment for staff and students. However, we will not be defeated. We will utilize a student assistance program that will provide equitable school-based mental health services and resources and informed classroom practices designed to reduce distress. Families will benefit from resources that will offer them a connection to school teams to support students' social and emotional learning and behavioral needs. The Department of Student Services is committed to fulfill the responsibility of being an asset to our staff, our students, and our families, and not create additional barriers and stress. Thank you.
Good evening, board members, Chair Robinson, and Superintendent Edmonds. The Technology Department will continue to provide support to both staff and students for both on-site and remote instruction. We will continue to offer help desk and repair hours, and we will communicate those so that students, staff, and parents are able to be supported at all times, regardless of what plan we are in. Teachers are currently able to provide remote instruction, be in their classrooms or remotely, depending on what the situation may call for. As we move forward with the possibility of continued remote instruction or virtual classroom options, we are in the process of exploring additional resources for instructional technology enhancements to our classroom as inventory becomes available across the state. We are also finalizing our iPad and Chromebook distribution plan. Students that opted to receive a device when we went home in March will keep that device for the upcoming school year, including students that are in transition to another school. Students that are moving from elementary to middle or from middle to high will keep the Chromebook that they were assigned last year. We will have to schedule our current second graders and bring them in so they can swap out the iPad that they currently have for a Chromebook as they move to the third grade. And once kindergarten registration is finalized, we will communicate an iPad pickup and assignment schedule for our incoming kindergarten classes. Also, students that have opted to not receive an ECPPS device for remote learning in the spring, we will have an opportunity for them to pick up a device from their school for the upcoming school year. We will continue to work with school staff and make sure that all students have what they need as we start the upcoming school year. We are also continuing to keep our website updated with our latest communication regarding school openings. We are supporting communication efforts within the district and the community and are very excited to be moving to a new district and school communication tool, which is Parent Square. So stay tuned for more information about this from Ms. Tammy Sawyer later in our presentation. Also, in addition to our communication support, we're working hard to set up additional training and professional development opportunities that include videos for staff, students, and parents that will be readily available on our website. We're also working to make sure that all stakeholders are supported and are able to find the answers to the questions quickly and easily. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Robinson, Vice Chair Warden, Superintendent Edmonds, and board members. In regards to zoning, we want to make sure the students that live in the same house attend school in the same days to help the families with planning. Due to COVID and the CDC, DPI, and DHHS guidance, we are allowed to sit one person per seat unless students live in the same home while all are wearing masks. With transporting about half of our students to and from school, we have the potential for the need to hire monitors as well as use more fuel, increasing transportation costs. Having monitor screen students at the bus stops, we are in the process of developing guidelines for the screening of students at stops in the event a student has a fever, no mask, or attestation form and is too young to do the form, ensuring the student's safety at the stop. Training the drivers and monitors on the guidelines for the safety of the students and staff is a proper way to sanitize our buses. In closing, our top priority with transportation is the safety of all students and staff. Thank you.
With departments to determine which areas may have significant cost increases or changes. We wanted to speak to you on a couple of those and the funding we have received specific to coronavirus relief. Next slide. One of the areas we expect to see a significant cost increase would be in custodial and sanitation supplies and staffing. We expect that could be as much as 3 times what we typically spend. We also expect there will be a significant cost related to technology. This is going to depend on classroom enhancements for instruction, student and staff equipment replacement and repairs that may be needed. And then when we get to the next slide, you will see that we've received an allotment of Wi-Fi devices, but it is not for the service subscriptions for those devices. We wanted to point out on July 17th, the General Assembly shifted $18 million from school technology PRC 015 and moved it to school business modernization. So we are receiving approximately $190,000 in coronavirus relief funds for technology, but we're not expecting to receive the approximate $103,000 we received last year for school technology allotment PRC 015. Next slide. On this slide, you'll see the breakdown of the coronavirus relief funds. This is the amount available to be spent this school year and to be spent by December. These are funds allocated from the state through House Bill 1043. They're considered state funds, but they do have federal restrictions.
On this slide, you see PRC 163. This is our CARES Act fund. These are federal funds that came to us as a result of the K-12 emergency relief funds. This was an application process, and the application for PRC 163 was completed in May. And the categories that are listed on this are the categories within that application. We realize that we may have to request to amend the plans as needs change. And this is just a graphical slide to show you the graph of the funds that we detailed in this previous slide.
Good evening, Board Chair Dr. Robinson, Vice Chair Warden, Superintendent Dr. Edmonds, and board members. Last week, I presented the ECPPS Remote Instruction Plan, which gave detailed information on the what of remote instruction. It included schedules, job responsibilities, and what ECPPS teachers and administrators would do to ensure all students received a quality education for the 5 remote learning days built into the ECPPS 2020-21 school calendar, and in the event we were in a remote option due to the effects of COVID-19. Since March 13th, educators around the world had to rethink and reimagine traditional schools. Over the summer, our team has been working tirelessly to prepare for any scenario for reentry. We determined in order for reentry to be successful for all students in remote or hybrid environments, students needed equitable access to quality instruction and curriculum. Next slide, please. Over the past few months, we have curated resources and put in place innovative structures to provide enhanced learning with ongoing and continuous support to make remote and hybrid learning equitable, accessible, safe, and successful. Before school begins on August 17th, our team is prepared to provide teachers with access to professional development opportunities to support their growth in research-based online pedagogy and access to resources to support blended learning and online teaching. Next. As in the past, teachers and students will be held accountable for teaching and learning this school year. Teachers will be held accountable to teach students the North Carolina Standard Course of Study. They will provide feedback and grades for assignments, and they will give assessments. There is an expectation that administrators and teachers establish time to communicate with parents who need opportunities to discuss questions about instruction outside of the schedules established due to work or other barriers. This will ensure equitable access to communication for all parents. We learned through our Jumpstart program this summer the value of frequent communication and the need for direct instruction in small group and one-to-one. It is successful for virtual and face-to-face. Students will be held accountable to attend school daily, virtually or face-to-face, and to complete all assignments and assessments. State testing has not been waived as it was in the spring, so all students must be prepared to take all state required tests. Parents will be assured that their role in a remote or hybrid option is not to instruct their child. That is the teacher's responsibility. We will ask for parent support to ensure their child is engaged each day in learning that is provided by the child's teacher, and to openly communicate with the teacher if there are areas of concern or issues. Our AIG students will receive direct instruction from their teachers, as well as have access to 20 K-12 advanced learning labs created by DPI in collaboration with the Duke University Talent Identification Program. For our other identified student populations, our team has been working on plans to safely provide access to specialized evaluations, reevaluations, and evaluations for students with disabilities and screenings. Following, you will hear from members of the curriculum and instruction team and the plans that are in place to ensure all students have access to and receive quality instruction. You will first hear from Bert Lane, Deputy Chief Academic Officer, followed by Dr. Holly Glenn, Interim Exceptional Children's Director, and finally, Tanya Proctor, Power School Coordinator.
Good evening, Chair Robinson, Vice Chair Warden, Superintendent Dr. Edmonds, and board members. I'm here to speak about two components of our Keys to Reentry plan, NC Pre-K and English language learners. I'll begin with the English language learners. Our goal is to ensure that all English language learners and their families continue to receive quality services. We are proposing a hybrid approach where English language learners are phased in over a 9-week period for state-required assessments. Services will be provided for all English language learners, whether remotely or face-to-face. There are 2 face-to-face screenings that are required for our English language learners. One is electronic and the other is paper and pencil. These screenings will occur by appointment within a designated school with proper protocols implemented. The safety protocols recommended by the CDC and DHHS will be followed. These protocols will include health screenings prior to entering the building, single-family appointments, masks and gloves, social distancing, plexiglass barriers, hand sanitizing stations, and proper sanitation between appointments. As far as schedules, we are proposing a 2-pronged approach regarding instruction. ELL teachers and the EL teacher assistant will push into classrooms as well as continue pull-out services for students. All English language learner students will continue to receive appropriate services remotely or face-to-face. We have been very intentional in our focus to ensure that our ELL families receive and understand needed information. We are accomplishing this by hiring a full-time bilingual teacher assistant who will provide translation service for documents as well as face-to-face translation services. Some of you may recall her from our recent town hall meetings. She was served as translator for some of those. Next slide, please. Next is pre-K. The goal of our pre-K plan is to ensure that all pre-K students are growing academically as well as socially and emotionally. As far as assessments, we are proposing a hybrid approach where pre-K students are phased in over a 9-week period for state-required Dial 4 assessments. The safety protocols would be the same as for the EL students, so I won't go over that list again. As far as instruction, a schedule has been developed that is inclusive of all components of the pre-K curriculum, including social and emotional learning. The schedule includes minimized screen times that are developmentally appropriate for pre-K students. All students will receive direct instruction. We have expanded accessibility by providing hotspots and instructional packets for download or for pickup. The plan ensures that all EL and pre-K students continue to receive quality instructional services, thus ensuring that all students and faculty are ECPPS strong. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Good evening, Chair Robinson, Vice Chair Warden, Superintendent Edmonds, and board members. First, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to return to this position to serve our exceptional students. Our legal obligation is to provide appropriate services for our students, but we are committed to providing the best education and related services possible. Our district and school administrators know that our exceptional students are very unique and that scheduling to provide the services they need can be challenging.
We understand that because of their varied and unique needs, we should start with the exceptional children when planning. Some of our students benefited nicely from remote instruction. Others do better with more traditional approaches, so we have to provide an array of services guided by their individualized needs. Those decisions, as always, will be made jointly by school staff and parents through IEP meetings or through conversations about how to best meet the needs of the children. We currently have outstanding initial placements and reevaluations. These students require assessments to finalize the evaluation or reevaluation process. If the employees return, they will schedule and complete the pending evaluation. The assessment teams will be working overtime to make sure these are completed. We also have IEPs that need to be completed. The guidance last school year was to provide families flexibility if they were not comfortable participating in virtual meetings. We will be moving forward with holding IEP meetings or addendums in person if appropriate, or virtually to ensure compliance. EC district staff will assist schools and provide support with face-to-face and virtual meetings. We will work hard not only to complete assessments and IEP meetings, but to move forward to serve our students' individualized needs. Thank you.
Good evening. Board Chair Dr. Robinson, Vice Chair Warden, Superintendent Dr. Edmonds, and board members. This evening, I will talk to you about 4 areas. They will include new student registration, transcripts, attendance, and grades. First, I will start with new student registration. We have a new online student registration system for parents, so they are able to register their students online and they are able to upload all documents on a secure site. This information can be found on the district and schools websites. Transcripts. Current and previous students can now request a transcript on a secure site for both high schools. This information can also be found on the district and school websites. Attendance. Attendance will be taken at all schools. Elementary and middle schools will take daily attendance. High schools will take period attendance. And lastly, grades. Teachers will record all grades in Power School. Parents will be able to see their students' progress in the parent portal, which is available to all parents. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Robinson, Vice Chair Warden, Superintendent Edmonds, and board members. Communication is a crucial part of reentry for 2020-2021, so all stakeholders stay abreast of the latest information for the 2021 school year. ECPPS recognizes the role school communications play in providing information and resources, reducing anxiety for families during this time where there is much uncertainty. School communications and transparency help to build relationships and to develop trust with those we serve. Just as we did during Classroom to the Cloud, the district will issue all official communications regarding reentry. Schools will share the district communications, providing consistent messages and resources for families. We will also share important resources related to safety for children and families during COVID-19. Communication should be equitable and accessible to everyone. As others have shared this evening, we too heard the voices of parents with regard to having a common communication tool across the district. As our technology director shared earlier, ECPPS is transitioning to Parent Square as the main communication platform for 2020-2021. This tool will allow us to communicate from one application to all stakeholders, parents, staff, community members, and students. Parent Square will empower our parents and community members to stay connected, informed, and to determine their level of communication from the district, their child's school, and teachers. To further strengthen ECPPS communications, to include all families and stakeholders, Parent Square offers translation for over 150 languages. Again, as mentioned earlier, there will be trainings for everyone on the use of this application. ECPPS will continue to communicate through the ECPPS website, social media, Channel 8 for those with Spectrum Cable, the Blackboard Connect media outlets, and very soon through Parent Square. The ECPPS Communications Department will continually assess our efforts and will continue to seek feedback to ensure we are reaching everyone with our information. And I would like to close my presentation with the following quote from Elon Musk. I think it's very important to have a feedback loop where you're constantly thinking about what you've done and how you could be doing it better. I think that's the single best piece of advice. Constantly think about how you could be doing things better and question yourself. Thank
Chair Robinson, Vice Chair Warden, Committee Chair Mr. Jolly, and board members. As you can see, much thought, care, and concern have gone into the plan the team has presented to you this evening. I would like to say thank you to this team. They've worked very diligently on this plan and will continue to work diligently on whatever the outcome is from this evening. We want to ensure that all of our children are well. And we know, as I shared earlier, that there are different thoughts about what should be done. This is the time for the school district, the community, families, all of us to come together and work together on whatever the plan is to ensure that the children in Elizabeth City Pasquotank Public Schools are well. We are going to focus on our vulnerable populations with a priority for EC and pre-K students. You've also heard some thoughts around our English language learners, lab work for CTE, and the demonstration farm. Next slide, please. I know you can't read that, but I'm going to share that quote with you. I read an article that stated responses to the pandemic within the international education community have varied from heroic to problematic. And it reminded me of this quote by John F. Kennedy that states, "The Chinese uses two brush strokes to write the word crisis. One brush stroke stands for danger, the other for opportunity. In a crisis, be aware of the danger, but recognize the opportunity." Whatever the board's decision is this evening, I will assure you that you have a district team that stands ready to ensure that we use this as an opportunity for all students. And at this time, we'll take questions, and our staff members are still online, so if you have specific questions, they are here ready to answer those questions. Thank you. I'm going to move back to my seat to leave this mic open so that if you need to call one of them up, I have a mic at my seat.
Any questions from board members? Mr. President?
Chair Robinson, this is Amber. If you have specific questions, then may want to go to the podium so that those of us online can hear more clearly.
Yes, thank you. Mr. President, these Go to the podium, please.
One of the questions I have is for Dr. Spencer regarding your statement on equity and how will we approach students who do not have support at home when they will be required to receive a grade for this first 9 weeks. And we are proposing that they be a majority of the students to be virtual learners. How will we ensure that they are engaged each day when they may not have a parent at home to support them other than attendance?
Thank you, Mr. President.
So what we're trying to do is to prepare our teachers for the best case scenario, also those other opportunities, if you will. I like to look at it as an opportunity to be able to help those students who may not have the support at home. And so we're going to equip them with professional opportunities in learning and development on how to engage and motivate students, but also to be able to have two-way communication at home. So for instance, if they don't have that support, maybe they're at daycare during the day, being able to go out into the community and also share our plan with those partners. So that way they will also have the support from them as well. We cannot guarantee what will happen at home. I don't think we can guarantee what will happen at home whenever our students are under our care when we're in the schools. But we will do our very best to ensure that the teachers and the administrators are keeping that communication open and that we're reaching out to give them the best that they can. That brought to my mind when you mentioned the daycare component. How will we assure that students who are remote learning are receiving that face-to-face instruction, even if it is virtual, if they say are at a daycare during the day or child care camp or something like that at the YMCA, they aren't able to, they aren't set up to provide the student the opportunity to watch that teacher instruct. So we have some things in place so that the teachers will be able to video themselves for the instruction. And so when we talk about synchronous and asynchronous learning opportunities, we're talking about those times when the students can log on and you're synced right there with your class. But in the event that that can't happen, we will have opportunities for the students to be able to view those. We have found that oftentimes, if there is not internet connectivity, the parents and the students have cellular phones or mobile devices that they can use. YouTube is readily accessible on those devices, and so having our ECPPS YouTube channel available and having those videos embedded into Canvas will allow the parents to be able to not only access Canvas through their remote device, as well as the students, but then to be able to watch those YouTube videos and still be able to get that instruction.
Any other questions from board members?
I think this question will be for Dr. Spencer also, I'm not sure. But I've heard a lot about, as far as what's going to happen through your regular classes. But I'm wondering about fine arts, such as band. I know high school has been mentioned that they're opening up with social distancing, but I'm wondering about younger grades or kids first wanting to pick up an instrument or PE for that matter. What is, going to happen there? And for that matter, even the teachers, is there going to be a way if we go just virtual, say, even a hybrid?
Thank you, Mr. Archuleta.
That's a great question, and we heard it a lot in our town hall meetings. If you recall last week, whenever I presented the remote instruction plan, in it we had schedules for elementary, middle, and high school. Those schedules were designed with all teachers in mind. And so those schedules have allocated times so that the students will be able to participate in all classes, not just core classes, but at the elementary school, the art, the music, and the PE. At the middle school, the same, the electives, and also at the high school. There is guidance that we are following, and it is updated regularly about band. We support music, so don't think that we are sitting here saying that we don't want band, because we do, and we do want choir. But there's also been guidance from the state that we received on Friday, and the Lighting Our Way Forward is updated regularly, and we get those updates. And basically, they say that we need to be cautious of choir and band because of the droplets that can be spread with the disease. But yes, we do want that to happen, and it is scheduled, most definitely. And it's also important for their social and emotional well-being.
Any other questions from board members? Dr. Williams?
Good evening. It was mentioned that we would try to ensure that siblings in a hybrid situation would come to school on the same day. Of course, that would really help parents. I'm just concerned about how that would balance out. And how would you manage that? And you may have more siblings than you would have on an opposite day, which would give you more children at school on one day, on one given period than another. So has that really been thought out, and could you share your thoughts on that? Ms. King, did you hear that question?
Yes, ma'am. Looking at it on the zone area would be the best way to determine how many of those students would be, so that we can eliminate the amounts that are going to be going to school, as well as that are going to be bus. That will be working very closely with the principals at each school to make sure we don't overload on one day versus another.
Robinson, I apologize. I just jumped right in there and I did not allow Ms. James Davis, who runs this department, it falls under her responsibility to respond.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ms. King. And Dr. Williams, if you're talking about the amount of students that we may have in a building at a time, of course, that's why we're going to need to have time to plan that. And that's why it's going to be so important. I do put a plea out to the families that they will go ahead and let us know. I think they have until tomorrow to let the principals of the schools know what their desires are going to be for their children, so that we can properly plan for that.
Can you hear me well? So can you repeat what you were saying?
Okay, so we're trying to wait for some families, because we haven't heard from a number of our families still about the choice that they would like. So when we hear that, we'll be able to better plan on which schedules that we'll use for families, for the schools.
So right now, we are considered the initial response to the surveys as what the parents have selected.
Just to give us a planning.
to give an idea for planning.
Correct.
Have all of the parents who chose Plan A been reached out to verify or give them an option for Plan B or C?
Yes, that the principals were supposed to go back and ask those families and those schools that were without principals, we had assigned staff to do that.
I had a parent reach out to me to say they had selected A and had not received a clarification email. Was just curious if that could be followed up on. You said that
Absolutely.
deadline is for tomorrow.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to share with Ms. James Davis. We gave some extra time for that. So by the end of this week, because there were some families that they've not been able to get in touch with. And that's what I was explaining earlier. We don't want to opt a student into a certain plan. So the principals will continue to reach out. The schedules will be final in terms of what they're taking. And so they're trying, as they're finalizing schedules, their course schedules, they're also asking about which plan do they want, but we had to extend it because we've not reached out, haven't gotten a response from all the families.
And can you clarify, maybe for those who may be listening to the meeting, I understand the time frame, but the 9 weeks and why we're choosing an entire 9 weeks to wait to phase everyone possibly back in when it will affect high school. It could affect high school and how their classes operate since they're semester versus 9 weeks.
And I'll respond to that. So one of the things we have to keep in mind about high school is that it's very problematic to try to figure out that schedule. In our elementary and middle schools, our students can remain stationary while our teachers roam, and hence cutting down on the transition. High school, they take classes and courses not in groups, it's by the specific course. And so what we're going to have to do is look at, once we have that data, not only who wants to be remote and who wants to be in the building, but what courses do you want to take? How do we now figure out to minimize that transition? And that's why you see some school district will say, we're going to have K through 8 that we will have some face-to-face, and then our high schools would be remote because they're trying to figure out that schedule. It's a lot of moving parts. And then to put on top of that, that we are low in staff on our custodial staff. We have to hire, I think Ms. King, not Ms. King, how many people did Ms. Wilkins say that she needed in for custodians? 5. She's down 5 custodians. And so there's work to be done, and we want to ensure, one, that when our kids come back into the building, that they're going to be safe, but 2, that we have these pieces squared away. And so we start a phase-in approach with our most vulnerable students. It gives us time to, 1, continue to serve those students while we're working on the other pieces.
Any other questions from board members? Our superintendent and her staff have brought forward a recommendation that we accept Plan B, Section F. Any other questions about that?
Chair Robinson, can I include with that a reminder that any parent that chooses the remote instruction option that want to keep their children home, they can do that. So that's a piece that's required by the state with whatever plan you use outside of C, that you have that option for families. So they'll make
that. Any other clarification? Ms. Warden?
me, will they have an option for remote or virtual instruction they so choose?
Yes.
And we have the staff, the numbers that will provide for that. There
Provide for the
opportunity to
virtual or
choose. Yes, we do.
for the virtual option. Yes. When we start looking at the bringing students in, and that's why we want to phase in, because we have to ensure that we have the staff to do that.
So we have the number of staff members needed to serve the students that we are saying we're going to take. Our English language learners and our exceptional students.
For those pieces, we're asking for them to come in for their IEP meetings and assessments. It's not a class of students, so that's why it's going to take us some time, because we need to ensure that we have the staff and being able to rotate them through, then we can get to all of the students. So we have staff that chooses to stay home to do that remote piece because they're either in a high-risk category or have some underlying health issue, or someone in their family has an underlying health issue that it could potentially expose them. We would, if they choose remote, we are not asking them to come into the building. We will have to work with the staff that we have.
Mr. Reza?
If teachers choose to teach virtually from their classroom, will teachers only be allowed in the classroom? In other words, some have asked if they will be allowed to bring their children with them to school.
Thank you for asking that question. And we are planning to be very flexible with that. We would have a plan in place, but if they're at home, they would have their children with them. So if they come into the school building, we're allowing some flexibility that they can bring their children with them. But it will be a requirement that they go to their classroom and stay in their classroom. There cannot be any congregating out in the hallway. We have to minimize contact. And so, yes, we're going to have some flexibility around that piece.
These are great questions, Mr. Archuleta.
The 17th is what the actual start. And you've already said we're down 5 custodians, right?
Yes.
And if we went to a hybrid situation, any buildings that are open, will they have a nurse there? I mean, do we have enough nurses?
We have nurses that share schools, so we have some instances where one nurse has 2 schools. So the quick answer is no. The other answer is we are trying to look in our, we are looking in our budgets to see our staffing needs and where can we potentially bring some of those folks in. I just received today an email from the Department of Public Instruction where there's a grant for psychologists. So they're slowly getting those pieces to us so we can get some additional staff in those pieces. And but it is a grant application and we have to apply, not necessarily that we will get it, but we'll definitely apply for it. And we're asking that for that we will not have anyone in the buildings other than the staff that's currently working for the first 2 weeks of school, unless there's a teacher that needs to come in because they, need the internet or prefer to work from their classroom.
Ms. Warden?
Sites where these children will, those particular sites are the ones that will be open and available with those staff members at that site.
And I'm going to ask Dr. Glenn to speak on that piece for the Exceptional Children's Program, because I think she does, I'm sure she does, and Bert Lane will speak on that for the pre-K piece.
I'm sorry, I did not hear the question.
Hold on, just a
And I
second.
was asking if there would be a certain site that would be designated for those exceptional children that will be coming in for some one-on-one, face-to-face, instruction.
Well, we've talked to the principal of P.W. Moore School, and we may be able to use that site. And we're working with the Edgewood staff, so that the technology staff, we have a meeting tomorrow, in fact, so that students can come in and do assessments at one of those two sites.
Speak on the pre-K piece.
We are talking about doing the same thing. We have not chosen the site yet. We wanted to go around and take a look at the schools to see which site would best suit the needs. So we're in process of doing that.
Board members, any other questions?
I think he's adjusting. No? Okay, yes, now. I just think this is quite a bit tonight. It is for everyone. We're looking at a plan. We have questions. You can't answer all of that. Part of it is we're having to trust the leadership right now. But probably a frustrating part of this is there are so many pieces that parents are wanting to understand the community that you can't share with us right now. So I'm thinking of what Mr. Archuleta said. The 17th is quickly approaching, and there's a lot to be done in a little bit of time. So that's why we're asking these questions, because we want to hear a little more about this fee and how we're gonna, I don't know if that sounds right, how we're gonna make this work. So once you compile this and once your team works on it, then you'll bring it back, because we will have to, I think, listen to this and hash this out again to really understand it, and maybe offer any suggestions, or we may have additional questions. And so you will be looking at a time frame of when you expect to have this done. What time are you looking at? What date are you looking at to have something for us to review and for you to share? And let me be clear, are you asking in reference to the class schedules for kids coming face to face? Your plan for this year. So that's a combination of everything. And so I know it's going to be moved in certain parts, but then you can have within that 9 weeks. So looking at that 9 weeks and what you expect it to look like by the 17th. Okay, so it would be that the majority of the students would be in remote. And so the majority of our students will be in a remote status for the first 9 weeks, with the exception of the EC students who would be coming in for the assessment piece, the pre-K students that would be coming in for their assessment piece, and the EL students, we're looking at some assessment for them. But outside of, we're not planning to phase in other groups of students. We need to get the assessments done. Okay. And that part. So I was thinking of a date, like what date do you expect? Like some of the questions we've asked now, but you're going to need to have in place once you begin. In your mind with your team, when do you expect to have that? Okay. Yeah. So if you're in reference to the transportation, are those the, those pieces you're going to need to have in place. So those pieces, that's why we don't want to start the beginning of the year, the first semester, where we're having to bring kids in or transport kids or have large number of kids in the building, because that's going to take some time. If we get the information by the end of this week, we will be working on this when school starts for the transportation piece, ensuring that we have all the signage down because we're down 5 custodians. There are things that have to be done that we'll be doing along the way in that first 9 weeks. But I'm happy to bring back a plan for what that timeline could potentially look like. But we're not asking to have a large number of students in the building the first 9 weeks. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Any other questions?
Dr. Spencer, has the professional development training for the teachers, has that begun?
So in regards to Canvas, we started some Canvas training in April. That started unrolling, and then we've provided some videos that will help, some free online courses, some resources and things that are available. The first week of August, we will have virtual office hours for Canvas. So that way, all of the teachers will have some familiarity with that platform. Additionally, we have a virtual conference that will be taking place August 5th and 6th. And while that's outside the realm of when school starts for teachers, we have established a way to kind of incentivize that by choice. And so there are a variety of options available, including the textbooks that you approved today, and how that will work alongside the online textbooks that we have. Also Edgenuity, which used to be our credit recovery and will continue to be, but also the supports that they have in place that are approved by the state of North Carolina. Also some of the resources and digital tools that teachers will need to be successful, as well as social and emotional learning opportunities, AIG strategies for the classroom, English language learners, iReady, so a variety of things. That's on August 5th and 6th. Those that can be recorded will be, and then we are going to house those where teachers will have access to them for the rest of the year and further. So if new teachers come in, they will be able to have access to that. Teachers will be able to revisit them at their leisure and look at them, and if they forget something, they can go back. And so there's ways that we can do that. And then built into the schedule, we also have time for professional development and PLCs. And so that will also be a time that we can go in, survey the teachers, see if they need more. We have an evaluation that's after our first virtual conference to see what else do they need, what are they looking for, so that we can provide that support for them. We really want to have ongoing and sustainable support for the teachers.
And for the parents, they will have access to information, guidance, videotapes, as you will, YouTube, whatever.
Absolutely.
Instruction.
Absolutely.
For Canvas as well as these other platforms.
Yes, and I'm going to use my husband, so hopefully he's not watching right now. But he's not very, he would say that he's not very technologically savvy. It took him a while to text, but he's gotten better. I'm saying that to say, I showed him the Canvas app video, and it's 4 minutes long, and it shows how you actually upload it to your phone, sync it with your child's Canvas account, and how you can send messages, check grades, look at assignments, and all of that. And he said, oh, this is easy. I can do this. And so I say that, so I'm sorry if he's listening, but if he can do it, it's very, yes.
And when will this be available? Is it available now?
Yes, and so it's done by actually instructor who purchased Canvas. And so that video is already there. We also have one for students that is already on the website under student resources for curriculum and instruction, as well as some other resources. And so we're also looking at really amping up the district webpage with resources and things that are available. Canvas does a really good job too with tutorials. So when the students do go back, we want to make sure that those processes and procedures are in place. And it might take the first few days of actual schooling, but that will ensure that the teachers, the students, and the parents are all very comfortable with what it is that we're asking them to do. So then we can really move forward and have that quality instruction.
So the teachers, in essence, will do some type of orientation with the students at the beginning in order to ease them into using. Thank you.
Ms. Houston?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a question. I guess I have two questions with regard to our rationale for waiting 9 weeks prior to starting. And we talked earlier about having probably the number of teachers that we would need for virtual. We have not addressed whether or not, which we can't do, but whether or not we have enough teachers who would want to come back into the building. So that's my first question, where we are with that. And the second one is, we haven't talked about this with the community reported entity. Have we talked about substitutes at all in terms of how we would get them? Because teachers want to be in their buildings every day, but we know things happen. So I'd just like to know what we have done or how we will address those two areas.
So for the piece about having enough teachers for the face-to-face, I'm not sure we will have enough based on the number of teachers that want to teach in the remote environment. And that's why I'm suggesting Plan B, option F, because if we don't, then we can stay in remote status. We can keep a majority of the students in remote status, but not have our facilities be closed down so we can still work with our most vulnerable population of students, which would be our EC students, ELL, and our pre-K students. And what was the second part of your question? Oh, substitute teachers. Yeah, that's the tough one. And we're not sure. We'll have to see if we have substitute teachers that would want to come in, because if we have a teacher that receives a positive diagnosis, then we have to do tracing. And if that were to happen and we couldn't get a substitute, then that class would have to go remote. It would be the same as if we wanted to offer a class, but we didn't have a teacher that wanted to do face-to-face, that class would have to be remote. And that's why that option gives us that flexibility, that when we get that data and we see that it's not, it gives us the option to do what's best for us. It gives us that flexibility. And we know, I mean, across the state, I'm sorry. Okay, totally give me 1 second. Ms. Dammer wants to share something about this. She works with that portion of it. But we knew with Plan B across the state, it would be problematic. We know that cost will increase. And that is why we're trying to be very slow. Start with our most vulnerable students. One, to see with that testing, we've got to get their IEPs up to speed. And it would be best to do that face-to-face if we can. And the same thing with pre-K. We know that there are a lot of moving parts to this. So we're not promising, we don't want to promise something that we know it will be very difficult to deliver. And that's why we need to get the data from the parents so we can see if the majority of them want to stay in a remote option and the majority of our teachers want to stay in remote option. It will be, we would have to see which classes we could provide in a face-to-face. So, and that's why I said when in the town halls, when parents said, oh, I want option B, I don't think it was a realization that there are many options that go in option B, and it doesn't necessarily mean that your child will be in that school building, 5 days a week, 3 days a week, 2 days a week. And it depends on if we, especially at the high school, it's going to be tough. And if we don't have a teacher that's willing to be face-to-face to teach that course, it will have to be remote. And that Ms. Dameron wanted to speak on substitutes. Ms. Dameron? Ms. Dameron, I don't know if you are sharing, but either you're muted or we've lost you.
Dr. Edmonds, I've sent her another invitation, but I'm not sure she's got on yet.
We continue to be in a very fluid environment, very fluid situation where we're not going to have all the questions and we're not going to have all the answers, even to the questions that we've been able to come up with. Are there any other questions from board members? What we're being asked is, Ms. Gordon?
I just have a question, Mr. Lane, about the pre-K entry. That is going to be staggered.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
The pre-K entry for assessment, is that going to be staggered entry?
It would initially be for assessment. We were asking for the first 9 weeks to complete the Dial 4 assessment. And then as other students were beginning to phase back in the building, pre-K would begin as well.
Board said, yes, we approve it, that students can start coming back in. Otherwise, it would be just the assessment. And that's a one-on-one, face-to-face.
So one-on-one, they'll come in one at a time?
Yes.
That's what I was asking.
Yes.
And the same for EC.
The same for EC.
ESL.
Same
I
for
knew for
ELL.
EC, but I was making sure about.
Ms. Dameron is on now, Dr. Edmonds.
Good evening, Dr. Edmonds. Can you hear me now? Amber, can she hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I just wanted to share around the substitute question. We are implementing a virtual substitute training program this year. It is now being in the implementation phase, with Kim Respis and I are working on that. And so one of the pieces that we will be involved in is having our substitutes trained to be and assess their ability to be able to do some virtual or online instruction. That is a part of our, if you remember, we decided to go with a virtual training this year. So this week, we'll be sending out a letter to ascertain the comfort level of the substitutes and their ability to do online instruction so that we can prepare for those subs that we think we may need if a teacher, in fact, is absent. Several of those substitutes have called. They are interested, and they just want to be trained. And so as we implement our new virtual sub training, we've considered the fact that some of our own instruction for this year will be online and prepare the subs to be able to do that.
Thank you, Ms. Dameron. And I've refrained from saying Plan C because with Plan C, your facilities the students can't come into the facilities. But with Plan B, option F, we can do the assessment for the students and those types of things. So that's what we want to be able to do to complete that, to get our IEPs updated, have our students that are in pre-K tested, our ELL students. And then once the board, if we look at the trends and look at second 9 weeks, then potentially we could move to that. But we didn't want our facilities to be completely shut down and not be able to do that testing.
Any other questions, comments?
I just want to make a comment on behalf of the professional educators in Elizabeth City, Pasquotank County schools. They may not be in a brick and mortar building, but they will be teaching your children actively each and every day. And it is their responsibility to do everything they can with all the support they can get from us, from Dr. Edmonds, and from her cabinet, to do everything they can to serve your children, our children in this community as effectively as they possibly can. Please understand and have every confidence in your ability to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ward. Any other board member questions or comments? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Archuleta. Ms. Perez?
Yes, and while I agree that the 17th is close around the corner, George, I also think that that's 3 weeks away, and 9 weeks in addition, that is 3 more months of no instruction, and that concerns me for children. So that's my main concern. Without the option for face-to-face instruction. I saw you shaking your head. Without the option of face-to-face instruction. Yes. Yes, without the option. Let me clarify, without the option for face-to-face.
Any other questions or comments from board members?
And I say that because, well, I completely appreciate and have been a proponent of us bringing in our EC and English language learners. We also have to realize there are children who struggle in school who don't have IEPs or don't fall into those categories and do struggle in the virtual model. And, you know, it is completely our responsibility to ensure that they have access to quality instruction via the virtual model. And I agree, Sharon, I know that we have excellent educators in this community, but parents have been very vocal about negative experiences in the spring, and that's something that we have to hear loud and clear and make sure that we make sure that this happens in a quality, high quality way.
And I totally agree with that. And I have confidence that our educators are high quality and will provide the quality education that our children need. Dr. Edmonds and her team will assure that they will, because they have a learning curve as well, but they've had opportunity to adjust to that curve. And so I think they're ready, willing, and able to do exactly what they need to be to serve our children.
I really did appreciate that we used the information that we got when we went to the cloud to assess, examine, and then do the necessary things that we need to make that better. And to also listen to parents and students who gave their feedback. And that's one of the things I especially appreciate. This was a time when it was very clear that parents tuned in and allowed us to know what worked, what didn't work, and opinions were. So I think that all of that, and I just really can't say enough about parent feedback. That was just tremendous. And it just makes you very, very happy and proud that you are working in a system in which parents have the kind of commitment that our parents have. And so I just congratulate and appreciate everybody for doing what they need to do to make sure that this process can move forward.
Thank you, Ms. Houston. Any other comments or questions? We have before us the reentry plan for 2020-2021. Entertain a motion to that effect. Plan has been, yes, that we will accept the plan that has been offered to us by the superintendent and her staff.
I'll second that.
The motion has been made by Ms. Houston, second by Ms. Warden. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand as a form of saying aye. All those opposed to the recommendation, raise your right hand, gesture of saying nay. The ayes have it, 6-1. Thank you very much. This was a very difficult decision, so we appreciate this. Our next is excellent educators. We would be needing to take action in open session on what we discussed in closed session. Ms. Pereza?
Yes, sir, Dr. Robinson. We met in closed session, the Educators Committee. Need a motion to accept the recommendations from the Chief Human Resources Officer and staff for that committee for resignations and elections and assignments we discussed.
Need a second? We probably moved in second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Signify aye. Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Our next agenda item is board member reports. Is there anything a board member would like to report?
But I know we have several we have to personal reaction. This return one I know we and she was fair. I will say I just want to say my grandkids were in the murder and I know it. And then I also like to mention Mr. Duncan Moore as personal, because he came here from taking this situation Mr. Moore, man, a lot too. I mean, personally, just have the actual family around, and I know we did a lot too. So, I think.
Thank you, Ms. Archuleta. Anyone else? Board member report?
Just like to say how much I appreciated the participation on the forums. I thought the questions were very thoughtful. I appreciate the parents who came on, sought clarification, and again, the response was absolutely remarkable, and I think it allowed us to, even though again, this decision tonight was extremely difficult, y'all expressed that earlier, but I think it allowed us to feel more comfortable with the decision that we had to make. So I appreciate it. Our having forums and then parents.
Thank you, Ms. Houston. Anyone else? Ms. President?
Ms. Houston, I agree with that. I'd like to say thank you to the staff for all the work that they've been doing. I have seen cars at Central Office on days and nights and hours that aren't typical, especially in the summertime, and we know the work that you're putting. And, you know, as a team, we will move forward and do the best for our students. We may not always agree on details and things going forward, but we appreciate what you do on a daily basis and the leadership that you provide for our district.
Thank you, Ms. President. Anyone else? I would like to, I echo what Ms. Houston was saying. I thought the town hall reforms were amazing. It really was an opportunity for parents to be able to hear, but also to share. So I appreciate taking the time to do that, particularly prior to this meeting. So thank you very, very much for that. Anything else that needs to be brought before the body this evening? Nothing else? Entertain a motion to adjourn. Properly moved in second. All those in favor say aye. Thank you very much for a very difficult meeting. We appreciate it. Thank you. Good night.